Man, this has been an interesting World Cup. A lot of eliminators happened the way they were supposed to. A lot of teams left, a lot wanting on the table. Let's get into it.
I need all the wins, yeah. Ain't no L's, I gotta get it, no call and quits, yeah. Gotta keep on moving no matter how hard.
Here comes Danny Tusizawa, back to Baker, Baker with the fin. Kurt Baker in for DC, and this may well do it old glory with the try. The New Zealand Sevens legend, Kurt Baker with the cherry on top.
Can you believe it?
Hello and welcome back to the On the Line Rugby Podcast, a show brought to you by the Believe Sports Network. I'm your host, Mike Nagaishi, and welcome back. I think we can glean a lot from the eliminators that happened to push for the semifinals. We have a lot to look over. Japan would have, could have, should have had an awesome run. Unfortunately, couldn't put it together versus Argentina. I think that they're in a weird gray area when it comes to where they're going to go moving forward. They definitely had a lot of growth, obviously, under Jamie Joseph and Eddie Jones prior to his departure. Where they go after Jamie Joseph leaves after this World Cup, I have no idea. I definitely think they need to lean on 2 to 3 things that can push them over the hump moving forward. Obviously Eddie Jones has been linked to moving to Japan after this World Cup. We will talk about that in a little bit. But if you look at the way that the Japanese team has prided itself on over really the last, 8 to 10 years of experience, from being, just a upstart nation to now being one of the preeminent contenders as a tier 2 to move it to tier 1. If they aren't already, you could argue they are. But they've leaned on 3 things. 1, incredible work rate. They still have, I think, I'm not sure if it's been updated, but the fastest work rate to and from phases, in and out of the breakdown, whether on defense or not. They're always getting the ball out quick, constantly resetting and releasing, setting up new play. They lived off of flashy play on the wing, back when they had Kenki Fukuoka, one of the gods, in my opinion, of the 2019 World Cup, and Kotaro Matsushima, the very flamboyant fullback and wing. He kind of seemed to have lost a step this year. Hopefully he gets back into form, but tons of options out there, and they thrived on these, at the time, young and developing talents from loose forward like Kazuki Himeno all the way on up. I feel like they've gone a little bit away from that, kind of taking in more international players who have that Japanese eligibility through ancestry or otherwise, that bring in different ways that they train and culture. And I definitely feel like the top league has gone more into, and rightfully so, to gain more viewership, taking in more foreign cast-offs and more former international standouts to kind of boost their numbers, get people into seats, and obviously develop the league a little bit more. I still think they're much more ahead of the curve, obviously, not just in the historical standpoint, but just as a nation than the USA does. And they're basically using the MLR method of, bring in more older players, like I said, get more butts in the seats, and grow the game internally from there. But I think they need to lean more on the younger talent. Obviously, a lot of the guys that you think of when you think of the Brave Blossoms is, Michael Leitch getting up there in age, Kazuki Himeno getting up there in age now. You have Keita Inagaki, he's getting up in age, the big prop from Japan. You have Kotaro Matsushima, he's getting up there. Ryota Nakamura and Ryohei Yamanaka, both kind of in their late 20s, kind of barely hitting their stride as players. They need to lean on that younger talent and kind of, I think, force themselves to grow into form rather than leaning more on the old heads that South Africa has for the last 8 years. Something New Zealand has done a little bit here and there. They're starting to grow out of it. That's the only way really for growth. It's the only really way to accommodate what the modern game is doing. And while Japan have kind of showed what they can do, obviously they're going to be a fighter and contender no matter who they fight against. But people are going to find you out. And I think that's what happened against Argentina. like I said, the biggest thing that was going to happen to them had to be in the trenches. You have to beat the Argentinians at the breakdown, and you have to stop them from using the ball and the high ball out wide. And that's how you're going to stop them and force the favor back to you. Obviously, Japan didn't do that. They were eliminated from qualifying for the quarterfinals. Now Argentina is going to go face, I believe it is England or Fiji. Don't quote me on that. But if you look at it, the way it's set up, Japan is poised to invest more into their homegrown talent. Perhaps they could maybe bring in some of these players who have international experience, like the islands have done, to kind of shore up their deficiencies for now, as they've done prior. They have guys like Lachlan Boshier, a guy who I will die over to have play for Japan. His ability as a breakdown god for the Chiefs in Super Rugby cannot be overstated. He's been and will continue to be in the top league as a threat. You could pull, while Quade Cooper didn't exactly look up the form, he continues to do so in the top league. By the looks of it, Australia will not take him back. A lot of the guys, you could maybe poach Richie Mwanga if he doesn't go back to New Zealand. You have options out there. And I think that you need to utilize that if you can't find the equivalent test level talent to replace them. Just start cycling them through. Obviously, you got out a little earlier than you would like. So you have, the next 1 to 2 years to really scout out your talent. Check eligibility, get these players who are playing in France. I want to say there's a couple. You could maybe get one of the Labuschagnys from Houston on over. You got options. So let's stay hopeful for the Brave Blossoms, and let's hope they turn it around. They definitely, obviously, need to have a future on-looking coach, whether that's Eddie Jones, whether that's Scott Hansen, or actually, no, you can't count Scott Hansen because he's on the All Blacks. But I guess you could get, maybe if you're looking at the professor who coaches in Panasonic, let's see, who else could you maybe snag? You could maybe do Steve Hansen. Maybe. He does do a lot of stuff with Kobelco. Tons of foreign talent, tons of foreign coaches. Utilize them. Might as well grow the game a little bit. And I'm sure in the next 4 to 8 years, you'll be looking at Japan as one of the preeminent powers on the world stage. As for their counterparts, in the sleeper realm, who've obviously taken over the don't overlook us Honda Civic with a laptop on the dash type of deal. You obviously have a lot of the South Americas. You have the Argentina's moving up there. That's apparent. But I think a lot of people have overlooked, the former Uruguays you could look at. But really the big ones right now are Chile. Portugal is another one. They're bringing a lot of that flair. They have featured players who can bring a lot of juice to the table. They're going to be on looking. And obviously the islands, they'll continue to have that, influx of former internationals and, up and comers who want to play for their home nation. I think that was the biggest obstacle for them for the last 20 years. They've obviously fixed that, and it can only go higher and higher from here. Hell, you could probably even get a couple All Blacks. Maybe Hossens Tutu can go play for Fiji if he's slighted again next year. Again, tons of options, tons of places where they can go. Only hopeful looks from either of them. In reality, though, as we look at Tier 1 nations, I think we can't avoid the collapse of the Wallabies in Australia. A lot of people would like to say that it's the coaching. In reality, not so much. I think you need to look at the vast disparity when it comes to popularity of just the sport in the nation. A lot of people like footy or AFL. A lot of people like rugby league. League sells out their stadiums every year. You got cricket, who's obviously always going to be in the mix. but especially the AFL, a lot of the young kids at the grassroots level, that's where you need to impact kids for the next generation. The USA is starting to do it. Obviously, New Zealand's kind of come back into it. Australia has let that stagnate for years. And because of that, it's left room for the AFL, for cricket, for the NRL to really poach a lot of these young kids moving up the line and say, hey, I want to be a league player. A lot of kids mentioned on a podcast from the Good, the Bad, and the Rugby, as well as from the Black Jersey, have all commented in public interviews that, they couldn't name a Wallaby outside of the last 10 years as a favorite player. A lot of them chose league players. A lot of them chose AFL players. And they're translating, whether it's crossing codes, you don't see a lot of rugby union players moving to different places and succeeding. You see a lot of that with league and AFL, with punters in the NFL, college football, offensive linemen, defensive linemen. It leads to a lot more pathways to success. They're marketing extremely well. Obviously, you have their league pass, which honestly should be a thing worldwide, and I don't understand why it took this long to catch up to. But just some of the reasons why, obviously, and also it's more electric. But Australia, because of that stagnation, hasn't gotten their breath of talent, and obviously signing a couple guys from the NRL that Eddie Jones managed to poach. Good on him, but they need more just support, I guess, from the grassroots level up. And that's the reason why they've been struggling, in my opinion, for all these years. Also, if you think of it, the coaching as well, Michael Cheika had his ups and downs, but the team was kind of turning into more of a trying to be wannabe South Africa, wannabe Argentina kind of team instead of like what they are. And let's face it, Australia, if they go back to what they are, which is physical at the breakdown, but more along the lines of that flat passing, Fijian type of flair that they popularized, through Will Genia, through tons of dudes like Quade Cooper. The list goes on and on. George Gregan, you're going far away from your brand. I don't understand why you would do that. They look lost. They look out of confidence. Yes, they needed to blood these players for future play in the hopes that you can win against the Lions side or a at least complimentary look when the 2027 World Cup comes to Australia. But I think the damage has been far done. The negativity in the media is another thing. I think that's the reason why a lot of the rumors that Eddie Jones will resign at the end of this year and move to become the Japanese head coach is so prevalent. I would support Eddie Jones in moving to do so. I think he had his greatest line of success with Japan. I mean, you can say his English years, but they kind of got stagnated towards the end. I would say the situation is different from his look across the sea with Ian Foster and the All Blacks. I personally, at least, never really thought Ian Foster was that great of a head coach. I thought that when he brought in Joe Schmidt and James Ryan, that he would be better. But obviously, it was more of a CEO job, I guess, for him. He didn't really offer much in the attack. That was mostly his staff selection, but the situation is obviously different. Eddie Jones can coach. Eddie Jones has a mind for future players. I don't know what happened. I think, rightfully so, negativity has got to him, and I don't blame him for leaving. If he does stay, hey, good on him. Continue your commitment to the young players of Australia, but I don't know what you would do to fix that relationship that seems almost already broken. I think it's been past due that they could have got a different coach, whether it's, hiring internally from Brad Thorne with the Reds before he bowed out. I don't blame him for doing so as well. You have the Brumbies head coach, whose name is escaping my mind. They have a bunch of coaches on that side. While I don't personally enjoy watching the Brumbies, they have obviously the most consistency, and they've been carrying Australian rugby for pretty much the last 4 years, I would say. You guys lost the Drua. They could have had more of an impact on the Australian side when they were playing in the D2 to move up into Super Rugby to play for Australian eligibility. But unfortunately, obviously, and rightfully so for them, they left to become their own thing in the Super Rugby landscape, which has benefited them greatly in the World Cup, as we've seen. But it's just too much loss on loss on loss on loss, and it's not going to get any better. We could be looking at, I'm not going to say the death of rugby in Australia, but you could be looking at a severe decline that will take decades to really fix on the gold jersey. And, it's sad for them, but it's going to come down to those two things. Can you look competitive in a Lions test? Can you maybe push some corners in the World Cup? You have now the next 4 years to do something. If you're going to resign Eddie, do it now. Allow the team to really try to get behind a coach with culture. Or if you're going to stick around Eddie, please fix the turnovers and please fix the penalties, because you're doing a good job so far. But if you can't get out of your own way, you're not going to win anything. And Australia's just looking at that for the next foreseeable future. I mean, look at the way that they didn't even announce the Marika Corbetti retirement. He's one of the legends in Australia, one of my favorite players to watch, at least in the gold jersey. And to see him go and only find out through, apologies if I mess up the name, Ponefa Musili, Instagram post is rather sad. He brought a lot to the game in Australia. Hopefully he'll continue to play rugby, rethink his position and play either for his home nation in Fiji, or, maybe go for the bag and maybe go play in Japan for a little bit, live out your golden years, because it's not like the MLR is really giving out them checks like that. Perhaps, Australia needs to do what the NRL and currently what Super Rugby is, at least in New Zealand, is kind of leaning towards, and get outside help, whether it's the Silver Lake deal, things like that. Get more marketing push. The MLR is doing it too. You need to get more behind and more eyes on what you have available, because if not, it's not going to look good. As for happier moments, you have the semifinals. Obviously, in my opinion, I got, for the way too early pick, Wales versus Ireland coming out of that side, and then South Africa versus Fiji. I'm a little torn on South Africa versus France. I personally have it being a very close game, under 2 points, but I hope that my block can move past that in France, past a definitely hostile environment. Teams going to have to be loaded through and through. You're going to see that in my team of the knockouts, but a lot of my players, at least for that, spoiler alert, are on the northern side. I hope that Fiji can win it all and bounce back. They have the players to roll against England again. I really hope that they will push through that pool and move on to the semis. They have the firepower. I expect them to do it. It's nice to see the islands finally represented in the semis, finally represented in the quarters, just like I predicted. Hopefully they can get to a finals appearance. As for the Northern Classic, I think for me, there's no way I was not backing Wales to finish and make it to the semis. Like I've said before, I'll say it again. Wales has been on a tear the last few years, in terms of just loss after loss after loss, whether it was the strike, just everything. They were not looking good. I really thought that in the World Cup they would stink it up. I think Warren Gatland, true to his name, has been the Jesus for that program. Him coming back rapidly, turning everything around, bringing that youth, that influx of hope back to the program, and that really has helped them move along and be that enforcer for this World Cup. I think facing Ireland, that will be an issue. Ireland will definitely trounce New Zealand. I think New Zealand will put up a good fight, but I definitely have Ireland under 10 winning it and taking it over. As to who I can see getting out of that way too early, I want to say that Ireland will get knocked off in the semis by Wales. I would love to see Wales in the final, but Ireland's just looking too nice. I think I'm a little mixed on it. I may have to think about that and get back to you in Friday's episode. Hopefully after I can watch how they play in the quarters versus their opponents. As for my team of the knockouts, as I mentioned, A lot of them are northern players. It was just kind of hard to overlook the ability and play that the North has. A disparity between them and the South, I think, is immense, and the gap's only growing unless change happens. But as of right now, I think players that I couldn't stop watching, at least on the teams that are in the quarters, really just start off with this simple. It's Andrew Porter. He's been a consistent, almost Toyota level of talent for Ireland, whether he's off the bench or starting with Tog Furlong. He's been a beast. He's an enforcer. I love what kind of things he brings to the table. Paul Malvaca, I think I couldn't move him past my team of the pools. He's been a freak of nature, one of the driving forces of France. Great to see him on the list. Great to see him play. Tom Francis for Wales. As I've said, Wales have been the enforcer. I was really hoping to put, maybe a Dewey Lake on this team, but with his lack of appearances and kind of loss of form, it's kind of hard to put him there at prop. But man, Tom Francis has been showing up and showing out. I can't not miss him. His counterpart in the back row, Will Rowlands, is my 5 slot. Rowlands has just been a consistent piece, another enforcer for Wales. Loved watching him play. Has a little bit of wiggle to him running. It's good to see him play. Great to see him on the list. Porter's counterpart in the back row as well marks my 4th spot. I think we all know who it is, Tog Byrne. I think there's no way I was leaving out Tog on this list. His ability, whether it's lineouts or whether it's running with the ball, and his offloading capability is outstanding. He'll continue to do well in the breakdown. And, I think he's must-see TV as a forward to watch. Obviously you have Josh Van der Fleur for me. No way I was leaving him out. Jack Morgan, the heartbeat of the Wales team next to Dan Biggar. No way I was leaving him out at all. And of course, but not least, Caelan Doris, the young standout for Ireland. This guy is a freak. I hope he earns World Player of the Year in the next 1 to 2 years. If he continues to develop at the rate he's going, he will be an all-time great player, not only for the green jersey, but I believe for all-time purposes sake. I have at 9, I think, was the most contentious spot. I wanted to put maybe a Thomas Williams in there. Maybe you could argue a Faf de Klerk or Cam Roygaard, but I thought that was a little too hot as a take. I ended up going with Jameson Gibson Park just for his consistency in the World Cup, his leadership, his ability to just kind of shear the ball off, whether it's in lineouts in the maul, his pick and go ability, his kicking is getting better, and his running ability obviously cannot be overstated. He'll be up there. Kieran Hardy is my honorable mention for that spot. That dude is a menace. Shout out to him for saving my fantasy team. For 10, it was really just a toss between Dan Biggar and Damian McKenzie. I know Richie Mwanga kind of owns that 10 spot for the All Blacks at the moment. I do not understand why you would not have Damian McKenzie over him for the foreseeable future, at least in this World Cup, just because of the form that he's playing with when he gets slotted in at the 10 jersey. It's undeniable. His electricity cannot be overstated. It is freakish. His lateral ability, his trust in himself, whether it's off the boot or through his hands, is immense. And I love seeing him play. Probably one of my favorite players to watch in Super Rugby. And he's showing it up on a world stage. All the power to him. Great 10 choice. For back 3, I don't think there's really much to say that hasn't been said in my team of the pools. Damien Peno earns my 11th spot. Louis Rees-Zammit earns my 14th spot. That Welsh speedster is just, he different. He's back and he different. And Bowden Barrett at 15, couldn't leave him out. Best player in my opinion of all time. At 12 and 13, from the team of the pools, there's a lot of shakeup. I managed to rationalize myself bringing in George North to the 13 jersey. He's been immense for Wales. I think the only thing that held him out for me was having Naya Salevu in that 13 jersey, having Semi Radradra, because of the pool stage performances that they had. That was the only thing that really held him back. North has been an exceptional player, one of the driving forces for Wales in the back line this entire World Cup journey. And welcome back to the list. As for 12, I had to go for the homeboy himself, Joshua Tuisova. Man, I do not know what I was doing. I totally forgot you on my team of the pools list. My bad, bro. But you deserve it. Whether it's encountering the high ball, trusting yourself, and running with downhill mentality that you've only really shown in Racing 92 and your pool years, you are a freak of nature. You deserve to be back on the list. Welcome back. It's going to be an interesting week, everyone. Just be happy that footy keeps going. Great teams are there. I noticed a lot of people were saying that they need to bring back integrity to the stage and not have the old heads like the New Zealands, the South Africas who've been beaten by teams being in there. I think no, even if you lost to, say, in Ireland, or you lost to Wales and your Fiji, who cares? You bounce back. What really matters in the term of sport, in my opinion, is what you do under pressure, what drives you through adversity, what pushes you over that line to whether it's putting your head in a dark place to make a play, whether it's giving up and being selfless on yourself instead of scoring a try and giving it to someone who's just open. Be selfless. It's that team mentality, obviously, that pushes a team forward, and all these teams deserve to be there. Yes, I would love to have Japan have been there. Yes, Australia should eventually have expectations to have been there. I would hope that they would have been there, at least jockeyed for it this year. But it is what it is. Definitely rethink your take, and we'll see you on Friday. Peace.